Oh boy. Shit. Just lost. Yeah. This is not a good, this area is a lot worse than I remember it being. I'm really ready to get the hell off of here. This is just my starting point. Yeah, I need to get across the street. Shit. Get me off in a second, Jesus. I wasn't 2 steps off the bus before there was a guy. He's just sitting in a pile of crap and about a block down from me, and he is just screaming at me. I don't know exactly what he was screaming, but I don't think it was complimentary. So yeah, get me. I already knew I was kind of coming off in an interesting area, but I was not prepared for that. And I should have been. I mean, depending on where you are, this is kind of a hit and miss area. So 2 summers ago, I did a video about a fairly obscure case, the 1920 torso murder. Somebody who was like attacked, murdered, and dismembered and had their parts kind of spread all over town. And I didn't go to any of the sites because I started doing that video right at the beginning of the pandemic. And so I wasn't going to be traveling anywhere soon. So I never visited any spots related to that story, but in early February 1920, someone was killed and butchered. Over the course of a couple of days, the first set of remains were found in Sullivan's Gulch, along some railroad tracks in kind of a ravine area, kind of near the Lloyd district. Then a few days later, there were some more remains found along the line of where Kenton Park is today in Kenton in North Portland. But the last set of remains were found right near this intersection I'm walking up to. This is 80th and Failing. And here where this yellow house is now is where the Winchell family lived. And two girls, it was Virginia and Beatrice Winchell, were out running around playing. And there was a canning hole, I think is what it was called, which was literally just this big hole that you would throw your cans in when you were done with them. And while Beatrice and Virginia were just running around, they stumbled out of the canning hole and noticed there were 2 wrapped packages in there, and it scared them. So they ran back home, which I don't know if this house dates back to 1920. It could, but if it was, this would have been their house. And they ran to their house, told their dad that they found something that was odd to them. And he went out and checked and found that it was some more remains, presumably from the same victim. It's the last set of remains ever found in the case. No more remains were ever found, and to this day, it's never been fully proven exactly who the victim was, much less who was responsible. But yeah, right back there, near that intersection, is where the final remains were found. So, woohoo! We're off and running. An exciting, fun day. And that's just kind of my objective for this video. I guess you could call it a therapy walk, but I'm going to be doing a lot of other stuff today. And I just know that there's a few interesting spots here and there that I'd like to check out. But we're starting things off with that. And I'm going to be kind of heading down the road, kind of lingering close to Sandy Boulevard, but kind of trying to stay off of it till I need to be there. Just because you get this far east and there's certain parts of Sandy that aren't great. I mean, I feel like it's more that side of 82nd, but whew, tell you what, when I got off that bus today, one guy over here screaming. There's a couple people off behind a building. They look like they had no good intentions. And I was like, no. I'm heading just a little bit south so I can the problem is that Sandy goes diagonal, so even as I go south and start cutting this way, inevitably Sandy's gonna come in and run into that road. But I'm back up to Beach Street. All right, let's turn and go down Beach Street. Actually, I did pick a good road to go down to get back to Sandy, because this is something I've only seen pictures of. I'm sure I've passed it on the bus or on a vehicle at some point, but I've never actually taken the time to stop and check it out. NV Medical Express. Doesn't look like much medical stuff's going on there these days. I don't know, maybe it's open on the other side. I just love that it's a building and it's just in this little island. That's kind of common for Sandy. Since all the crossing streets are diagonal to it, there's a lot of little islands and thin buildings. But ahead here, this is the Sandy Jug. I don't know if that's what it's always been known as, but is it a, I forget whether it's, I think it's a bar. Something like that, but it's got, the end of the building is shaped like a big jug you drink out of. So, I know Clearski the Creeper, another local, he did a video here not too long ago, and I was like, well, if I'm ever in the neighborhood, I need to stop and check out the Jug. So yeah, it's just kind of this tiny little bar, it looks like, real tiny, but it's got this piece of attractiveness. And I just stepped off the main road real quick and did a little video about the Roseway Theater here, which was heavily damaged by a fire first week of August. I don't know when this video is going to go live, so if it's September, it was August when the fire happened. And as of this recording, I still haven't seen any updates as to what is believed to have caused it. It is almost 100 years old, so you know, things like this sometimes happen with old places like that. You can end up having electrical issues or something you didn't even know about. I don't know. But I just did a video, stepped off of Sandy for a moment to do that video. That's one of my primary reasons for coming out to this particular area, starting here with my vlogging day, was I wanted to get video of the Roseway close to the immediate aftermath of the fire. Capture that, catalog that, whatever you want to call it. Before I continued hustling and bustling. And I'm gonna probably hang out on, oh, thank you, walk signal. Changed the moment I got here. I'm gonna just kind of hang out on Sandy for a few blocks. Yeah, it's really, this is how Portland shifts. So it still shifts so quickly. I'm only like 10 blocks off from where I was when I started, when I'm just like running. Like, oh my God. I got crazy people yelling at me. And then like you get down here and there's like people walking their dogs, people walking around with their kids, people going to the donut shop back there, diner, go to the barber shop, get a trim. There's a swanky Starbucks and a Safeway over here. Like, it just changes at the drop of a hat. And actually, I'm just around the corner from where murder case happened back in the 90s that I randomly stumbled upon while I was researching something else entirely, and it popped up, and I saw it was like around Sandy and 67th, and I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna be like literally at Sandy and 72nd taking video of the Roseway, so I looked that over, and it's, you know, it's not really a distinct murder case. It's a, you know, simple case of a, you know, already kind of unhinged guy who may or may not have been a skinhead, which this was the early 90s, and then the 80s going into the 90s, there was a lot of white supremacy, a lot of skinheads roaming around in this city. But it's just, it's one of the scariest types of possible murder cases, because it's a situation where there's someone that you maybe, if you don't know them, you see them and they create a disturbance, and you don't initially perceive them as dangerous, but then they just snap, and they snap so quickly that you can't stop them. And this is 68th Avenue, so I'm between 68th and 67th, and it looks like all the businesses along this stretch are closed, but there's this tiny little bar right here, which I don't know if it's open anymore. But that's the site of this particular case. Yeah, I think it's open. It's just kind of nondescript. Yeah, it's called D's Bar now. But back in the early 90s, it was called the Driftwood Tavern. And, it was kind of a dive. It probably still is kind of a dive. But yeah, it was in this area, it was kind of, I guess, during that time, for being Northeast Portland, was kind of perceived as a, pretty safe neighborhood compared to others. And married couple, Andrew McDonald and Deborah Oyamada, I'm hoping I'm pronouncing her name right, they came to the tavern here just, to hang out. She was playing at the poker machine, and two guys walk in, Matthew Thompson and Paul Witcher. And Matthew Thompson immediately starts hassling Deborah. I'm going to just call her by her first name because I don't want to end up mispronouncing her name, but she was Asian, and he immediately went up to her in this place and started harassing her and making really, racist comments. He apparently walked up to her and asked her if she had samurai blood. Just a straight-up racist. And again, his grandma would later suggest that Thompson was possibly a skinhead, and his grandma was who he was living with, because all badass skinheads, have to live with their grandmothers, apparently. So, Andrew gets pissed, comes over, intervenes, and the bartender kicks Thompson and his buddy out. You're causing a disturbance, you just got here, get the hell out. And so, this is where it gets disturbing and tragic, is, they think Andrew's gone, not Andrew, they think Matthew Thompson's gone, and boom, just a minute or two later, he comes flying back into the place, and he has a boot knife on him, and he pulls it out, and he just charges for Andrew McDonald and starts attacking him. People try to, come on the scene, fight, pull him off, and they said that he was so quick with this knife. One witness, said that it was like he was stitching. He was just like, shh. 3 people got injured, including Deborah, but Andrew was fatally stabbed. And I think they got him to Emmanuel Hospital, where he succumbed to his injuries. And again, the back of the bar would be right there. Guy walked up and went in, and then 2 people started coming outside, and I thought, these people are gonna hassle me, what are you doing filming in front of our bar? And I'm filming history. So it's just what is so disturbing about it, at least from my perspective, is the fact that just, this guy was probably a troublemaker, but you kick him out, usually someone's going to go screw you, whatever, and then they find a new bar to go to, probably hassle other people, keep the night going. And even though it happens, you don't expect somebody to suddenly come back and kill you over getting kicked out of a bar when you were clearly instigating trouble in the first place. So just the savageness of it, the brutality, the quickness, and just how it just went from 0 to 100. One moment you're taking a breath, okay, good, that guy's gone. And then the next moment, he's right there with a knife, actively ready to kill you. This guy was, again, I use the word unhinged. I feel like unhinged is kind of a a kind way to describe who this Matthew Thompson guy was. But the story's not quite done. In the aftermath, understandably, Thompson flees. His buddy Witcher flees the scene with him. I mean, what else are they going to do in those circumstances? And they start fleeing south. I don't know if they went this direction. I'm just still traveling south on 68th. So you have the taverns, there's a few blocks directly up that way. But they ended up traveling a few blocks south and a few blocks west. And they were ultimately heading towards the vicinity of Northeast 61st and Sacramento Street. Now here we are in a much more posh, charming area, not too awful far from the Driftwood Inn, and Matthew Thompson and his buddy Witcher, at the moment I'm suddenly forgetting his last name, but it appears they made it this way. It's probably on foot, I don't know, somewhere between 10 and 15 blocks. How's it going, buddy? But something must have happened. Something must have gone awry. We don't know for certain. But by the time they got to here, this is 61st and Sacramento, something must have gone wrong. But at this intersection right here, it's kind of a five-way, like there's a bunch of streets meeting each other, but a little later on, Witcher was found at this intersection and he was dead. Thompson just decided to kill him too, I guess. So there had to have been some altercation that happened between the tavern and this intersection, which again, ballpark it, I don't know, 13-ish blocks if you're going down and over. So I don't know, Witcher, because Witcher probably wasn't even involved. He didn't want to get mixed up in that. He leaves with this guy, so now this guy's on the run, and Witcher's like, dude, I didn't know you were gonna, lose your shit and kill somebody. My guess is that's probably what happened, and Thompson's like, you're with me, buddy, and an altercation occurs. Witcher wants to get away from the situation, and things escalate, and right back there, Thompson stabbed him to death too. And he was eventually found. It didn't take long. This guy wasn't the world's greatest criminal, nor a very stable mind. So he was apprehended and ultimately convicted on these 2 deaths. And of course, he stabbed 2 other people, including Deborah. But they managed to survive, so yeah. But again, the motive is still not fully clear on the matter, which leads me to believe that Thompson has chosen not to really talk much on the matter. But, the implication is that there was probably definitely some racial motivation. That's what led him to accosting Deborah in the first place. And, the fact that he immediately targeted her husband, Andrew, who he intervened when this guy was harassing his wife, like anybody would do. And that's what ultimately led to Thompson getting kicked out. So it wouldn't surprise. So Thompson obviously is pissed at this Andrew McDonald guy because he meddled in something that he had every right to meddle in. But again, this Thompson guy's not a very stable mind. And I think, so that triggered his violence. But I also think if this guy was a skinhead, this guy was the worst of the worst, the crappiest of the crappy, he probably already had a negative attitude about Andrew McDonald, who I didn't read, but I think was Caucasian. So I could see this Thompson guy being pissed that a white guy would marry someone who's not white. It's exactly the kind of thing that would trigger a white supremacist. So that may have played a little bit of a part. I can't say for certain, but it definitely seems like this guy was a messed up, unhinged racist. And he was probably, more or less a ticking time bomb, ready, for when that opportunity presented itself to just snap. And that's what seems to have happened. And again, that was back in 1994. It was November 1994 when that happened. So I was passing by there, just wanted to cover that story while I was in the area. And I got to circle around, go through a pretty nice area, and I'm kind of wrapping around and actually technically making my way back towards Sandy again. And I just walked south enough that I forget that the big old, like, it's just the Rose City Golf Course. I forget exactly what it's called. But yeah, the big, huge golf course is right down the hill here. And this is Sacramento Street, which kind of just borders it. On the north side, I remember coming here looking for, like, the Rose Festival. Like, they hide a medallion somewhere and give you these clues to try to find it. And one of the spots we thought it might have been was the little park near this golf course. I remember coming through here trying to find the medallion, and I'm pretty sure the people that found it have found it multiple times. So that's a little suspicious. I've actually noticed this is becoming a more popular thing around town. It's like the second or third time I've seen one of these. It's like a little home. It's a homestead. It's a tree-ish home up against a tree. Yeah, I think I saw one of those in or around Ladd's Addition, more southeast Portland. So it's cool. Little things like that have just started popping up. You know, people using their creativity to come up with some pretty cool stuff. Focus. There's a few chairs there with the bench that's normally there. I wonder if just a neighbor put those there. Because I don't think... See, there's another bench up there, and that bench is just all by its lonesome. So I don't know. People are tossing their wicker chairs around. I mean, it's nice. You actually get a good view. I mean, not just of the golf course, because who gives a crap about that, but you can get some good views into the distance, good views through the trees. It makes it look like it's so forested down there, but it's all residential that way, pretty much all the way to the edge of Portland. And even then, pretty much this side of I-205, which is about 35 blocks that way, it's all densely residential. So don't let all the trees in the distance fool you. It's all residential. So charming up here. And again, I'm not that far removed from the hell I was walking along back that way. And honestly, you get to the other side of the golf course, there's like a thin stretch before you get to the band field, but even then, it's kind of sketchy over there. There's just a lot of homeless people with their tents set up in the little nooks and crannies. But then just right here, it's just like gorgeous. And hello, FedEx man. And, you know, a lot of people have these really nice gardens, and the houses are all really nice. And it's just really quiet and calm, and everyone's chill, and it's always a pleasant encounter when you're in one area where I started, and you're just like, oh shit, I need to get out of here. And now I'm walking over here, and I'm like, yep. Rapidly approaching Sandy again. I don't know if this is, I don't think it is. I was gonna say, I wonder if this is a spot. It might be. I know there's a spot along Sandy where there's a statue of a guy named, I think it was Ralph Waldo Coe. And he was like a really prominent Portlander in terms of psychology, and he ran his own asylum or sanitarium. It's called Morningside. And I did a video about Morningside a long time ago, because it's where Mall 205 is today. It was where the Morningside campus was, and there was a lot of sketchy stuff that happened there, including a lot of natives of Alaska who couldn't get the care they needed up there because there was still so much frontier land when you go back 80, 90, 100 years ago. And a lot of them were transferred down to Morningside. Ooh, it's like a Benson bubbler. Charles B. Merrick Memorial. I do not know who Charles B. Barrick is. I'll have to look that up. But, I am thirsty. But yeah, I swear Ralph Waldo Emery. Yeah, there's a spot here where the ground is like, it's like something used to be there. Okay, let me just clarify some junk here, because I was calling back on like 4-year-old memories going here, so it's an understandable mix-up. I'm kind of half right when I got here. There was a statue there, but it was a statue of George Washington, but it had been presented to the city by Dr. Coey, which is how I remember him being associated with that. So that statue was there, right where that patch of lower greenery is. And as I actually understand it, because again, you're going to see me start rambling about how I thought it was a Henry Waldo Coey statue, and now they probably took it down because they found out what a sketchy character he was in certain respects. Well, it wasn't a statue of him, as I later recalled. But as I understand it, the statue was taken down in 2020 when there was lots of protests going on around the city, and admittedly vandalism going on to some structures around town. So as I understand it, that's why that particular statue of George Washington was taken down. So anyway, let's get back to me being confused by stuff. And I swear it was a much like this, and in this area, that there was a statue thing representing Ralph Waldo Coey, and now there's a divot there, like something was recently removed. I wonder if some of the sketchiness of the doctor's background finally came to light, and people decided, hey, we probably shouldn't be having monuments to this guy who, anyway, as I was starting to say, a lot of Alaskan natives ended up in Morningside, which was Dr. Coey's, sanatorium. And a lot of these people ended up dying in Oregon. A lot of them, their whereabouts are unknown. It's unknown where they were buried. Some were probably buried in, unmarked graves. Some may have even been buried near the property there, which could mean there's potentially bodies buried under Mall 205. I don't know. But, yeah, and there's actually been an ongoing effort to try to figure out where all of these Alaskan natives were. And there's like a website for it. So some good people doing some good work. But yeah, I think that's where Dr. Coey's statue used to be, and it looks like it's been removed. And while we're talking about sketchy history, here's Clyde's. They have a newer sign from the last time I was here, so I wondered if maybe the business had changed. Because this is Clyde's. Is it called? Because I know there's a sign that says Prime Rib, but I think it's just called Clyde's Prime Rib. And it's this very castle-like building. They got ribs, but it looks like you'd go in there to get a leg of lamb after the slaughter for the day. Slaughtering on behalf of the king. So, and I have to verb this very carefully. This place was actually technically franchised, because I think the original one was in Utah, and there was a few in other states, but this site of Clyde's used to be called, I'm not going to say the word, but it's a word that starts with, it's a racial slur against black people. It starts with a C, and it rhymes with boon. Imagine that word, and then chicken. That was what it was called, the blank chicken. Was it this? I think there's something chicken in. So literally, this restaurant had a racial slur in its title. And this restaurant wasn't around in the 1890s when, people were just a lot more stupid and a lot more, well, I wouldn't necessarily say a lot more racist, but yeah, no, I think this is, I forget exactly, but it was I think the 40s or the 50s that place was here. So it was here, honestly, not that long ago when you think about it, and it just had a racial slur in its title. And, in super Whitey McWhiterson, Portland, a lot of people didn't have a problem with that, apparently. There was obvious blowback, and eventually it did close down, but just... No good. No good for anybody. And from there, the road begins to dip down, which means I need to get off this road because I don't want to be doing a bunch of hill climbing. But this is kind of another cool kind of historical stretch. A lot of these buildings are older buildings that have had probably many businesses in them in the past. And it's just a cute little stretch. Ooh. I think someone's about to get in trouble. So I stopped the camera briefly because I noticed there's a dog that was tied up to a tree. It was in front of a business, and it's not horribly hot, but I'm feeling pretty warm. And the dog was panting, not super hard, but the dog was definitely panting. The dog definitely looked a little bit hot. So I kind of paused and stopped for a second because I'm just like, maybe the owner's just inside this business briefly, and I'm kind of, going through the motions of like, what should I do? Because I don't want to just walk away and assume all is well when you've got a pet outside. And then I look up, and there's a Portland police officer walking towards the spot. So I decide I'm going to just keep on moving, but I'm not going to leave the area because I'm wondering if somebody called the cops in relation to this dog being left out there. So I take I take a step forward, I get a little ways past it, I let the police officer pass me, and then I kind of pause and look back. And the first thing I see is this officer who was coming from way over here. It wasn't like he was just in the area, and I immediately see him crouch down next to the dog. So it wasn't like he was just there and wanted to check on the dog. He came from way around the corner here. So my guess is somebody called and said, hey, out in front of so-and-so, there's a dog here. If that dog has been left outside for quite some time, just tied up like that, or God forbid abandoned, fucking hate people that abandon their pets. You're the scum of the universe. Know going in whether you can take care of a pet or not. And if you can't, figure something out. Don't just, drive somewhere and then push them out of your car and just leave them there. They're your pets. They've learned to love you unconditionally, whether you're a good person or a piece of crap. So I immediately saw the officer crouching down and assessing the situation. And I was like, okay, something is definitely happening here. And I even saw some people that were kind of not loitering, but they were standing a little ways down, and they started walking up to the officer it almost looked like maybe they'd been waiting for him, so maybe they were the ones that called him. But yeah, if someone left that dog out there for a while or abandoned that dog, I hope they get fined out their ass. I hope that vacation they were planning on taking later in September has to get canceled because they've got fines to pay off. Because that is disgusting. Okay. So I took a brief pause to try to make sure that wasn't a situation where the dog had just been completely abandoned. Because I would have lost it. Yep, I screwed up. I let myself go too far down hills, and now I'm gonna have to compensate for it. I'm also starting to get a wee bit thirsty. So maybe I was a little too hasty in finally veering off of Sandy, which I just did. But there's stores around. I'll find something, but for the moment, I was noticing a lot of these roads dead end, and it's because there's a big steep hill right here. So I'm gonna have to shoot up this stairwell. Alright. Get ready. We're gonna Rocky Balboa this thing. Dun dun dun! Dun dun dun! Dun dun! Oh. Oh. Wasn't as steep as I thought it was gonna be. Well, okay. Works for me. Because I'm trying to start heading north for another video that I'm going to be doing, so Trying to start making my way that way. I love all these houses up on the hills. They gotta have pretty good views, I would think. Plus, of course, there's other houses obstructing them. Also, looks like it's how you know you're in a ritzy area, when the roads get really narrow and really winding. This is cool through here, though. Yeah, I know in this area a lot of the roads are real windy. It shows on a map really well because, again, you know, 98% of the roads in the Portland area go east and west or north and south. We're very much follow that like grid pattern thing, with few exceptions like right here where there's hills. Harry, I've made it to the top. Alright, so I hope y'all enjoyed that. Just me mostly meandering back and forth up and down Sandy Boulevard, getting to see some sights, some interesting things and some tragic things at the same time. But I knew I was going to be in the area, and I knew there was going to be some interesting things I wanted to see, so here's a little video for you chronicling some of those things, some of the more interesting things of Northeast Portland, which I haven't spent a lot of time in recently. And make sure the bus wasn't coming, so I'm trying to catch a bus now. But yeah, all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Remember to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to. Helps make my life easier. And I also have a Patreon if you want to help me out there. The link is in the description of this video, along with the links to my Facebook, TikTok, Reddit subreddit, and my Instagram. I did that totally out of my usual order. But anyway, yeah, those are all in the description. And thank you so much for stopping by. Hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, this has been Steve, the Amateur Historian.